there were plenty of races. I raced a lot, and there were a lot of races where it just out of nowhere, I would go from full gas to feeling like I was going full gas, and just terrible race. And I couldn't figure it out, but it was occasional. And it started to happen more and more frequently. And I'm also over 40 at this point. And the last tour of Utah I did, I was 41.
Wow.
Dave's 95.
Yeah.
If anyone out there's trying to
do the
math
math
for you.
Yeah. How is Social Security? Welcome to Brainstoke. I'm Tom Telford here with Preston Niederhauser. We are in studio today with the Harwards. Before we jump in with Dave and Breanne, going to call it Bree today. We're grateful for our sponsors. Today is the gravel episode sponsored by Envy, the MOG. Envy is now a proud sponsor of Brainstoke, and 2025 is going to be a big year with several projects with Envy. One of which is the MOG, their incredible gravel bike that we are collabing with. And it's going to be exciting to see what we come up with there. This episode is also sponsored by Levo, a mind care company. Thank you to them. Keeping Utah's mental health in a great spot. And Adam Barker's Bolt Shave. I'm freshly bolted this morning.
It's still winter for me.
Are you wearing a sweater down?
Yeah.
Oh,
dear.
Boy, Preston. Bolt's awesome. I actually can't believe of this scrub. Have you tried the scrub?
I have used the scrub. It's great.
Harwards, something there. Something there in this stuff. Anyway, thanks, Adam Barker and Bolt Shave. Let's dive in.
All right.
Should we do this?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Okay, we're dealing with the Harwards are both pros at pretty much everything they do. Dave is a 6-time finisher of the Tour of Utah. What was that the hardest week you've ever had on a bike?
Yeah, I think so. Each year was a little bit different. One of the last time I raced it, we had Francisco Mancebo. We brought him in. He had won the year before with the Rock Racing team.
Yes, I remember this.
And
Rock
then
Racing.
at the
And Oscar Sevilla was with him. I think they tag teamed it maybe?
Yeah, it was.
Anyway.
Like racing that year was ridiculous, just trying to stay in the field.
Yeah.
And we brought him in because his team, Rock Racing, folded over the winter, and he ended up just racing on a provincial team in Spain. And at the time, Canyon Bicycles down in Draper, Mike Pratt was like, hey, who can we bring in as a hitter? And I thought, realized that Mancebo wouldn't be coming back to defend. And I reached out, I think, Facebook Messenger, and said, hey, would you like to come back to Utah and defend your Tour of Utah title?
Yeah.
And didn't hear back for a while, and finally heard back, and he said, I would love to, but I'll be like dates and logistics. I'll be finishing the 10-day tour of the Caribbean or something like that.
Okay.
And,
A lot of climbing.
yeah. And he's like, as long as you're fine with me showing up the day before. And it's like, yeah. And it was so funny. I picked him up at the airport, took him down to Canyon in Draper. We had a couple bikes built for him. And he had, in messages, he had said kind of what his preferences were.
Yeah.
So back then, there was no compact option. And so it was 5339, and you were, I think, your biggest gear, like your easiest cog would be a 28.
Okay. Yeah.
And Tour of Utah has a lot of climbing. And And he said, yeah, I'll do 11:23. And he was speaking in Spanish. And I was like, okay, I speak Spanish. Did 23?
Are you sure? Yeah.
23. And he's like, yep. And then I hear later during the race that he rode the backside of Big Mountain in the big chain ring.
Uh-huh.
And his easiest cog in the back was a 23.
23.
And he's not a cross chain guy.
Yeah.
And so, so putting him in the right place throughout the race, I had the hardest week of bike racing.
Your job was to usher him to wherever and launch him.
When it was the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Were power meters a thing then? Probably not.
Yeah, I didn't have one on that bike.
Yeah. I can't imagine what you guys were doing.
If only Strava existed when we were racing hard.
Oh, jeez.
Dang it.
I love it.
That's pretty great.
What a week.
Yeah.
And pre-ketones.
Pre-ketones.
How did it happen?
Maybe Bree can speak to if ketones are a thing or not.
Bree, give us
Are they
your
in our
background,
head?
but start with 81818.
Oh,
I want to hear about the ink. There's some
okay.
beautiful stuff for both
Looking
of
at
you.
my tattoo, 81818 is actually our marriage date.
Okay.
And it's a palindrome, and I am a dork about numbers.
So very intentional. The
yeah.
wedding date before the tattoo
This-
was very intentional.
The tattoo became, did we do it before or after?
We did
got
it
married?
before.
Right before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We actually rode our bikes up Little Cottonwood and stopped at the Alta Lodge and walked in, and we're like, might be a cool place for a wedding, and just asked, and they opened the book, and I just saw that date, and I was like, that one.
And she's like, the wildflowers are so much prettier in June. And she's like,
Nope, I need this date.
That's super cool. For doing that. And they were like, you're in spandex. What is going on right now? We're like, it's cool. See you in August.
Yeah, awesome.
Oh, I love that.
But yeah, I have an entire sleeve that's all about numbers and bees, and it's all tributes to different things in our lives, in my life. So,
We want to hear some of those stories, but tell us yours, background.
gosh, I'm a Utah girl, born and raised here, and my athletic life, I played volleyball, and because I was this tall, I'm 5'7", but I was this tall when I was like 10 years old, and never grew after that. But I played tall sports and ended up being a back row specialist, and ended up playing at Westminster College, and partway through I was studying biology and stopped playing because school was getting more demanding, and started riding bikes with my stepdad. And he told me to do a bike race with him. Again, Snowbird, Little Cottonwood is kind of my place, but I entered the Snowbird hill climb on his mountain bike with skinny tires on it, and won my age group, which whatever that meant. But never looked back, started riding bikes, and within 2 years I was Cat 1, and then I went to the U for grad school and studied nutrition, which interestingly enough, because I was riding bikes and I went from being a power athlete to an endurance athlete, and I got to a point where they were saying riders go, and I was bonking. Like, I was eating protein and trying to ride a bike all the time, and getting sick a lot, lost a ton of weight, getting a bunch of positive attention for being super strong and lean and all the things that are highlighted in cycling.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not as much anymore, it seems, but I'm in a very long-worded way saying that's what brought me into studying nutrition. I was med school bound, doing all of that, and decided that I wanted to study nutrition specifically for athletes, and the U of U has one of the few programs in the country that does a coordinated program with sport dietetics. And I got into it, and it let me ride bikes more, so it kind of all fell into place. Right when I finished grad school, I got a phone call from the owners of the DNA cycling team saying, we're going to start a women's pro team and we want you to be on it. And I was like, wait, what? I just finished school. I'm supposed to get a job now. And well, I'll try bike racing. I've always wanted. And so that was that. I raced for DNA for 6 years, from the original squad up until I actually started racing gravel as Plan 7, getting really into that. And I've just been working. Hold on, let me hit one spot in the middle. My coach hired me in the midst of all of that to do nutrition for his athletes. And a few years down the road with that, we realized we were in love with each other, and I married my coach, who I'm sitting next to. And
is there going to be a theme of abuse of power? Legal grooming?
No way.
I'm just kidding.
No. So, yeah, I guess here we are now running Plan 7, and he does the coaching, and I do the nutrition, and got 2 little kids.
Perfect match. Yeah.
Then we decided that we weren't busy enough and thought, oh, let's do a gravel race.
Yeah.
Which turned into 4.
Now the owners of the Utah Gravel Series. So between coaching, Plan 7 endurance, nutritioning, the Utah Gravel Series, you were also involved in, if I remember, the original group who started Nika Utah.
Yeah.
Which I want to hear about a little bit more. But yeah, these are 2 very dynamic, driven people. And so it's cool to hear more of your story and the drivers behind all of it.
Yeah, I mean, I fell in love with bikes as a little kid, and it was BMX bikes in vacant fields that we could build jumps and tracks.
Yeah.
And this was in American Fork before it, like, I know where to go, but nothing looks familiar anymore.
Yeah.
And all of those fields with the amazing jumps we built are
Yeah.
now housing developments. But went through a kind of a struggle that I survived through childhood, and always wanted to do more on the bike. And I remember specifically, I think I was 16 or 17, and you watch that Sunday morning Wide World of Sports, and they give highlights of all the sports around the world. This is, late 70s, early 80s.
Yes. Yep.
And what was the tagline? The thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. And
I love that. Sponsored by like Juicy Fruit or
Right.
Some gum.
The agony of defeat
that.
was a ski
So good.
jumper wiping out before he took off on the jump.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I was always searching out like these sports that were inaccessible. At least I felt like were inaccessible, and cycling was one of them. I felt like it was really inaccessible to me. And I was watching European car racing, the little tidbits that you would get. And I remember 16 or 17, I was hearing about mountain biking. So 85, 86 time frame. And I asked my parents, I was like, I think I want a road bike. I want a mountain bike. I want to get into cycling. And, I had a challenging relationship with my parents, and they said, we don't think you'd like it. And they were facilitating all of the sport interests of my little brother. And I think it was just the game that they were playing on us. And that sounds weird, but it was a really manipulative, when I look back on it. Both my brother and I were adopted at birth, so not physically related. And I was always in this conundrum of, why do our parents not love us? Like, they went to the trouble to get us. And so all of these like struggles, and when I finally found something that I really wanted to do, they were like, "Oh, we don't think you'd like it." And I don't know if that pushed me over the edge. And as soon as I was able to do it on my own, it was full gas. And so I think I did my first mountain bike race in 1989. Just, I think it was kind of a pirate race of University of Utah students. There, back in the day, there was a big World Cup racer that lived in Salt Lake, Martin Stanger. He rode slingshot. I don't know if you've ever seen a slingshot mountain bike. Look it up.
Yeah. Love it. Throwback.
And he would show up to these races, and it was super fun.
Yeah.
And that just sent me on the cascade of bikes.
When you started at that age, you mentioned a little bit about that relationship with your parents, but was there a chip on your shoulder? Was it kind of like, hey, you told me no, and so you put that away and held on to that?
And I think I raced angry to my advantage for a long time.
Yeah. It served you.
It at the time, I think so.
That's right. That's this interesting, thing about good hurt and what is good versus blowing you up. I mean, we've had a lot of guests talk through that. Just what are those chips on the shoulder that serve you, that helped you get you where you were, but there were moments where it clearly was toxic.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I could look back and just add up all of that time, early mountain biking through the mid-90s, which I overtrained and hurt my back. And the physical therapist I went to was a cyclist. And he's like, "You can't ride bikes. But I know you love mountain bikes. Why don't you start trail running?" And immediately started trail running. And I was like, "Ooh, what kind of races can you do trail running?" And so I did that for a while. And I think it was 2001. I thought, why do I not mountain bike race anymore? And got back into it, stepped into road, cyclocross, and
haven't looked back.
And it went full gas really quick. And when gravel came along, but looking at the timeline, there were plenty of races. I raced a lot, and there were a lot of races where it just out of nowhere, I would go from full gas to feeling like I was going full gas, and just terrible race. And I couldn't figure it out, but it was occasional. And it started to happen more and more frequently. And I'm also over 40 at this point. And the last tour of Utah I did, I was 41.
Wow.
Dave's 95.
Yeah.
If anyone out there's trying to do the math for you.
Yeah. How is Social Security?
Exactly.
Like, tell me you're slaying it in the Huntsman Senior Games right now.
He's lived 4 lives already.
Isn't the minimum age 55?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do it this year.
Sign up. Let's go.
Preston and I are targeting it for pickleball in a few years, man. Oh, I love it.
But what was the diagnosis year? 2016, it started happening all the time. And I was ignoring it. But we used to run an in-person winter training program that we called House of Watts. Mm-hmm. And I think I was running the class, but you could see everybody's data on the screen. And
I'm always looking at everyone's
Yeah.
data, partly because I'm competitive and partly because I'm curious.
Concerned.
Yeah.
And I'm like either coaching or doing nutrition for most of these people. And
I
was
stopped
very
pedaling,
concerning.
and because my heart rate just skyrocketed, and I felt like I couldn't push. It was a hard workout, and so I stopped pedaling, which I don't ever do, and let it calmed down fairly quick. Started pedaling again. 5 minutes later, just went up. And my heart rate should have, at the time, it should have been like 145, 148. It like pinned at 220 because that's like as far as it would go. And so I stopped pedaling again. And after the class, Bree was like, what was that about? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I drank too much coffee today. But I knew that there was something, and just who knows. And so she's like, well, how often has this been happening? And I'm like, I don't know. And it probably had been over the previous 10 years, but it was occasional, but it kept increasing. And so, interestingly, one of Bree's clients that she was personal training was a cardiologist. And so we just sent her a note, and she's like, you need an appointment right away. And so she fit us in. She's like, I'm pretty sure you have atrial fibrillation. And that's super concerning for someone who's healthy and exercising frequently. More than likely, if you don't have arterial blockages, that could be the biggest concern with atrial fibrillation. But we need to figure this out. And so they strapped me up with a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week monitor. And I was supposed to wear it for like 30 days. And after 5 days, they're like, we've
got enough data here to figure it out.
And so after 10 or 12 MRIs of mapping the scar tissue,
Essentially, that's what it is he's used his heart so much as an athlete that spots of scar tissue had developed, and it was
short-circuiting. Atrial fibrillation is where the electrical signal gets short-circuited, and it causes the left atrium to flutter. And so they were, with the advanced heart rate monitors, they were measuring 350 plus. Because it just sits and flutters. And so it doesn't empty. So the reason why I would feel like I couldn't push anymore is the ventricle wasn't able to push a full pump of blood out to the body. And sometimes it would be, a few minutes, and then I'd get right back at it. And sometimes it would be like an example would be that summer at Crusher. On the initial climb, I was like, I am toast. What is wrong with me? This is ridiculous. And I came over the top of the first climb, did the descent right before the big descent, and I was like, oh, I'm fine. And I ended up passing a ton of people and had a good race. But then other days it was like, it would be 8 p.m. after a hard workout, and my heart rate was still like 140, just sitting there. And so, the electrophysiologist joked that it was an overuse issue. And I'd just done too much with the heart. And he was able to correct it with an ablation procedure. And I haven't had any issues since. So it's been 8 years almost.
Yeah. Unchecked, what does that lead to? I mean, is there a point where if you would have pushed really hard where it just explode?
I think that's the stuff you hear where athletes just randomly have a heart attack or have
crash and they're dead because they had a heart attack and crashed their bike.
Yeah. It's amazing because you tend to think the crash did it versus they had it and made them crash,
Absolutely.
So
wow, that's amazing. 220?
Well,
like that's and then
that's what just a standard heart rate heart rate
they
monitor
maxed
would
out.
measure. Yeah.
That's wow.
That's really terrifying.
Yeah. So lucked out from that standpoint.
That's incredible.
But that's like thinking about either chasing my demons or running away from them.
Yeah.
I mentioned as we were talking earlier, my brother fell into addictive lifestyle and spent years addicted to heroin, was able to get off it, but the depression that led him into that ultimately led him to end his own life. And, you know, it's easy to put blame on the person who decides to take their own life. But I feel like having grown up with him, having had the similar experiences, like a lot of our decision making was either I've said this to people before, it was taken away from us as young children, and we just kind of floated, I felt like, without like motivated instruction from a parent. Like, I was really scared when we found out that we were going to have a baby, because
Why were your decisions, why were you fearful of making decisions?
I don't know if I was fearful. I wasn't equipped with the tools. And I can say that now, looking back over, with perspective of an adult who survived through that. But the level of manipulation and control that was put on us, and was also like from the authority figure of our parents. And, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and there wasn't, what's the parenting right now?
Love and logic.
Compassionate parent.
Compassionate. Yeah, it wasn't compassionate parenting.
Yeah,
and when you're at baseball practice,
Yeah.
like if you weren't paying attention, the ball got thrown at you, or you got hit on purpose when you were up to bat so that you knew what you were dealing with.
For sure.
And, there was not soft parenting. There was not, like positive, hey, you're starting college. As your parent, I'm a college administrator. I had a scholarship. I played trombone in high school, and I had a scholarship offer at the U, and they knew that I would get half tuition because of my benefit from parents. And I was like, hey, I could do this. And being a musician is pretty fun. I like that. And I got talking with my parents, and they're like, well, we don't think that that's going to work out, because you're going to need to work to pay for school. And we're not willing to help with your schooling. Just straight up.
Yeah.
And so I went to school without any kind of direction, but yet my parent was an administrator at a university.
Yeah, interesting.
And I just, like, it was this weird manipulation of always, like, not sending you in the wrong direction, but never giving you any tools to find the right direction.
I've got to think that you establishing a relationship with Bree probably was tricky or challenging. I don't know. I don't want to speak for you, but how have you navigated relationships, and how do you parent now? How has it changed who you are as a parent?
My relationship navigation was horrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrible. And it was, again, just lacking direction. And this is what you're supposed to do. And, I don't want to throw dominant religion of Utah under the bus. For me, it failed. And I know for a lot of people it doesn't. But for me, that was one of the manipulating points. Mm-hmm. And it was used against us. And at the time, we weren't protected, even though we specifically asked for protection. We were not protected. And so, like, having all of the authority figures and all of the support figures fail you, including like grandparents who, when all of this was brought to light, grandparents, aunts and uncles knew, and they told us we were ungrateful. And so, like, this implosion of all the things that are supposed to help you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not surprised of the outcome with my brother. And I feel so fortunate that somehow things ended up okay for me.
What saved you?
I don't know. Pedaling the bike really hard. Maybe a weird optimism that I probably should, like, if you look at my experience, should not have developed. I don't know.
with all of your background and the relationship with parents and extended family, it sounds like you were looking for coping. Your brother obviously chose that route.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody turns to whatever coping mechanisms they have, and whatever they've structured, whether positive or negative, that's what you default to.
Yeah, and I luckily found cycling and was able to pursue by myself. And I told you that it takes me a while to get to a point, but I wanted to ride bikes when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And in 2011, like, had a personal interaction with people from NICA. And it was a big attraction. Thinking, their big tagline at the moment was, I wish I had this when I was in high school. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, my life would have been completely different.
Yeah.
And so that sent down a path of, like, how do you do this? NICA, as a national organization, offered a certain number of grants. Like, Utah came on as the 7th league. And so I think they were giving at that time 1 grant per year. And it was a sizable amount of money along with equipment, and then the hands-on, like, they would come out and help you produce the races. And so it was probably 6 months in 2011 of full-time work by multiple people to prepare a bid to present to NICA. And we were able to develop a board that was fairly robust quickly, of people who were involved in cycling, people who were involved in business, who could connect the dots for sponsorship. And NICA selected Utah. The first year we raced with 325 kids. I think a total of 360 or 375 were registered in the system.
Yeah. Wow.
And so
different today.
But it was something that I felt like, wow, if I had this, if that could have been something that could have tagged my brother in, because he became a cyclist also, but, like, his ups and downs, just, it didn't go anywhere. But I really felt like this could be different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It would have changed my life completely. It would have sent me on a pathway of, you get these volunteer coaches who are coming in and giving space for kids.
Yeah.
Like, I know there were so many coaches starting out, Like when we threw it out there, like we need volunteer coaches. And I'm like, man, so many parents are just going to be like, and then like as it's grown, it's become so just everything. Like certain families, that is their year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? There were so many people from the cycling community who weren't parents who stepped up and became coaches early on. It was amazing.
Yeah. It is amazing.
The impact of it, I mean, to be involved from the beginning is really remarkable. I mean, I look at where obviously we were very connected and still are with the Morgan High team, you know, and I think Dave Bailey might have been on your board in the beginning.
He was.
And he was, you know, they had 10 racers their first year, and now we've got 150 plus in a little 3A school. But you look at 7,500 kids in the state that are participating in this program now, like, good on you for having some vision there and getting after
Utah
it.
surpassed the biggest league the third year.
That's amazing. To see that
And
kind
now
of
the
growth.
biggest by a margin.
It might even be approaching a third of everywhere.
Yeah. Bree, I'm curious, when you look from
I'm here.
the spouse looking in, I'm really interested to know what do you see in Dave and yourself in Nika? Why is all of that so attractive, right? Why is the sport so attractive in light of kids who, I don't know, whether it's abusive, whether it's neglect, whether it's whatever, what are they looking for that then is attractive in endurance sport?
Well, I think you said it earlier that. Did you say that being on a bike, you don't necessarily have to be social and on a team, and everything, you know, everyone go in the center and cheer and stuff. Like there's camaraderie, but there's also independence in it, and so I think it provides a really great, it did for me as well, outlet of exercise and release and being outside and challenging yourself, but also not feel like you have to be like the other kids, or like you can find what you're good at. Maybe you're a sprinter, maybe you're a climber, maybe you're better at just going for a long time. And I think that's really specific on trying to break down the sport, but I think that is what is appealing. And so to answer on, like, as a spouse looking in, I came into cycling in a very different way than Dave did. And he was actually a role model of mine when I started riding bikes. He's the guy that's winning everything. And I was like, never did I imagine that he would be my partner in life 10 years later.
Yeah.
Like, not even on my radar of thinking. And so just to learn his story at a very deep level and go through things with him that he physically, emotionally, I mean, coming to terms with it. When I first met him, he wouldn't talk about his experience like this. And so I think it's not just the bike, but also the relationships you develop. I mean, not to segue too far away, but I have teammates that one of our jokes within teammates that we just had a reunion. My team ended this year, and they invited a bunch of the original riders back, and we had a big party and a ride, and we were talking about how we call ourselves life mates for team. It's kind of like this when hashtag was really big. that was our hashtag was life mates for team, and it's true. You develop relationships through this sport that I think, because whether you're suffering together or sharing experiences of suffering, it really goes a long way in having connection.
Shared experience, and you know what people are going through at their individual level. And I always tell people that, don't compare, don't take down your experience because you know that somebody else goes so much faster. You're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And you're doing it at your individual capability or within your own constraints. And it does make connections. Like, you can understand there's something special about pedaling.
Yep.
Bree, when you you mentioned that your stepfather he encouraged you to do a bike race, and then two years later you're a Cat 1. So was he kind of the driving force, or at least he introduced it, and then he helped you navigate USA Cycling and all of these other things, or was it a community of riders that discovered you and helped you figure that out, or were you like completely on your own and you made it happen?
Great question. Kind of a combo of a lot of that. I'm very self-driven, and I felt like when volleyball ended for me, what am I going to do? And I was good at it, like immediately. I actually felt like my whole life I was pretty good at sports, but I never found the sport that was right for me. And so I kind of took off on my own, but my stepdad was my biggest supporter in that he'd been racing, locally long enough, and okay, you need to call here. Let's register you for this. Let's get you this equipment. He was fantastic support, but I was also 22 years old.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't start riding bikes besides having a Huffy from the store or whatever.
Right.
Is that the brand? Huffy?
Yes. Yes. And we can throw that under the bus collectively.
I tried really quickly to think of what was like. I had a rock hopper. I don't know. But then there was also women in the community that swooped me in. I could name drop a few that have
At
been
the time you started, there
big
were
staples. I mean, I started as a roadie. The scene here, we had 4 or 5 current international level professional women training and racing in Utah that did local events, and it's very different now.
as well as a mentor on the team that she was on, participated in the Women's Tour de France in the 80s when it was like, that was premier.
Yeah, and so I think a combination of me really wanting to see where I could take it, as well as I think I understood that I had some really unique opportunity, because I have girls that come to me now. They're like, how did you do it? And I'm like, I was in the right places at the right time, and I was driven to do it. So it was a lot, I think, a good combination of luck, skill, and hard work that kind of put me where I was, because I was able in a very short time, having nothing in my background. Like, I went from, I remember my first pro race, I was chanting in my head, don't die, don't die, don't die, just over and over again. It was absolutely terrifying to go from competing in Utah to competing with, I mean, the field's 100 women gunning for top 10 spots. It was insane. And then when I got to do some time in Europe, it was like times that by 50. Wow.
I forgive me for the little personal side note, but my son is at Valley of the Sun this week.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
And it's a 3-day stage race, and he's pretty confident in 2 of the categories, but he's a little nervous about the crit. And I am too, and I, as you're sharing your story,
the Valley of the Sun crit. I'll tell you that.
He should be nervous, right? So I'm like,
if you're not, then you're overconfident.
If you DNF the crit and you stay upright, we're okay.
Yep, that's winning.
The season is still in front of you. So anyway,
absolutely, you can pass that along.
Right in the front.
From me.
That's exactly.
Dave says that as a crit racer. Excuse me.
Yeah,
that was always my advice from my lovely coach. Just stay in the top front.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it's a piece of cake. There's a field of 70, but stay in the front 10. You got it.
I'm really good at bumping elbows with people.
Ain't no thing. Yeah. You've played volleyball.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And then you get, well, look, you've got the power. Like, you're stronger than everyone there. I'm like, okay, again.
Yeah.
Inserting yourself up there with the sprinters is not really my thing.
Bree, looking now at all of these young women, girls and women that are coming into this sport, what does that do for your heart?
Oh God, I love to see the growth, mostly on the high school mountain biking level. I mean, it is incredible. I will say that I see both sides. I think it's really hard for women to get to the top level. The ones we're seeing on Instagram are the top 5%. And everyone else that's struggling to even make it to those races. Mm-hmm. The support, it's like any sport that gets big, right? The support level is great for the best people.
Yeah.
Everyone else is out of pocket, has to, even when I was racing, we called ourselves working pros. We weren't making the kind of money to have it. We were calling ourselves professional cyclists, but we weren't getting a paycheck that was paying our rent. And we were gone half the time and having to get time off work. Luck is a huge part of my career. My coach hired me and gave me a job that all I had to do was say, hey, coach, can I have time off to go and race? Oh, wait, you're directing my team? Cool. Like, I'm really, really lucky. And so I think the growth and the passion is incredible. The opportunity, a lot of race directors, I'm going to help a little segue into becoming a race director and talking to others. We really want to push more women having the opportunity to race because of the hardships of getting there and getting the support financially, physically, everything. So having an outlet to be able to provide for women, I think, is great. But it's just the facts. There's not as much money or support or space for women in the sport. But there is on like the high school level and stuff. Like it's like 50-50, isn't it? There's as many girls as boys. And so I think the passion is there. And so to answer your question, it melts my heart because I love seeing it. I wish there was more that women could have in order to get to the level that they love to compete in and have those fields be big again, because it really is top tier that are getting that support.
There's so much opportunity, we talk about it often for women in the sport and what is going on. And it's near and dear to our hearts. We've coached enough girls now. We each have one daughter, neither of which love the bike, but we've adopted so many girls in our community. Brainstoke right now is going to support, some young women who are just incredible athletes. And so we want to be a part of that, the future of women in sport. I got to take you back because I'm curious to know from both of you, when you use the word connection, when you think about cycling and having the connection, but I want to just double click on that a little bit and learn more. Cycling is one of those sports where I could go out 8 hours alone and I feel deeply connected, but I'm not connected to another human. I'm connecting to myself. It sounds odd, but there's a deep intimacy of self that cycling taught me. I can ride for hours and hours alone on the mountain bike in Park City or up here at Snow Basin, and I can finish and be so fulfilled in self. And I was out there with Guns N' Roses in my ear, Taylor Swift, whatever. Just have you experienced that? Like a deep sense of self and a connectedness, even though you're alone?
Absolutely. It's something that I greatly miss because now, as a mom of a recently turned 2 and 5-year-old girls, if I get an hour on the trainer at 5 a.m. before everyone wakes up, that's a good day. Whereas it used to be, wake up, start, have breakfast, digest for a while, answer a few emails, ride my bike for 5 hours, come home, have some more snacks. So very big, abrupt life change over the course of that. Not complaining, but the connection to self, I didn't even realize how much I loved and needed that when it was my whole life. And yeah, priorities are different now, but I find myself craving a big long ride for me. I don't even want to go on a group ride. Dave will tell me,
Yeah.
"You want to lead group ride this Sunday?" I'm like, "No." I don't even know what to say to people. I'll get dropped. And I want my headphones and
Yeah.
a big long canyon to climb by myself.
There's something there in that though, and I want you to just share, Dave, you can chime in on this, but there's a fine line between performance and coping. Performance is really about going out and trying to beat the numbers or whatever. Coping is just trying to win the day, right? What you're talking about is, I just want to win the day, like feel a little bit of win. And say, and I'm a parent too, so is Preston. You're in a tough stage, right? Where if you've loved sport and getting out on the bike, when you have young kids and you love your children, but there is a moment of like, I just hunger for like to be connected to self in nature, pedaling, and that's coping. That's different than performance.
Absolutely.
Speak to that a little bit, just because you guys are top coaches, and yet there are probably moments that your athletes, they're needing coping from stressors of life, not necessarily like, or my watt's getting better. It's like, I'm just trying to win the day, man. Do you see a difference there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the coping is what brings a lot of people to the bike. And all of the things that we've said about it, like you challenge yourself and you're challenging yourself at your own level. Maybe you decide to compete. And so you're not only challenging yourself at your own level, but with your peers in your age group or in your category. And so that I think it plays off of each other, whether it's all about performance or about coping. And we see that with our athletes. And one of the big things that I really want to flesh out early on is, what are your time constraints? What are your legitimate time constraints? And like if somebody writes down that they've got 15 hours a week on average for training, I'm like, really? Let's break down 15 hours a week.
Really?
Let's break down 15 hours a week where you need at least one rest day and maybe two. Just depends on what your recoverability is. And you start to backfill, like, okay, 15 hours over 5 days, that's 3 hours a day. And yeah, most people can bust out a long ride on a Saturday for a traditional schedule. Say you can do 5 hours. You've got to now split up 10 hours over 4 days. It's a lot. And so I want people to be realistic, because there's no black box of like, this guy weighs 170 and his FTP is X, and give a plan. It's how do we balance volume and intensity to get somebody towards their goals within their time constraints that individually motivates them and keeps them excited, because like this time of year, it's mostly trainer time.
Yeah.
And I'm not into giving workouts that are entertaining. I'm giving workouts that get results. Mm-hmm. And so I try and give people added things, like when I find something to listen to or watch that keeps me engaged, and all of a sudden 2 hours is gone when I'm on the trainer, I pass it along right away.
Yeah.
That's also coping.
Yeah,
right?
and that's
Distraction.
a coping.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because to perform, you're on purpose stacking stressors.
Right.
You can't grow.
You're adding more challenges in your daily life by making yourself excessively tired.
Literally the definition, right? Like stress the muscle, stress the mind.
Yeah.
So you can expand it, right? Hurt, heal, adapt, progress. We used to talk about that all the time with our athletes. Like, we're going to make you hurt on purpose, and then you're going to heal, and then you're going to adapt, and that's progression, right?
Yeah.
So how do you blend that? You're smiling, Bree.
Well,
So
I was
how-
just gonna say, as the dietitian in the mix, I just like to say, have a snack. Don't forget to have a snack. That's all. That's why I was smiling as you were talking. But
Like when I've been most focused on performance outcomes, I've found like I'll put the earbud. I don't ride outside very often with an earbud, but there'll be times where I'm getting ready at the house. I know I'm going on a 5-hour ride. I put the earbud in, and 3 hours in, I realize I haven't started anything. And Bree will make fun of me about that because
one of my first group rides, which I used to use as training for races, because if you could hold Dave's wheel for 4 or 5 hours, that's training for a women's race. No joke. The watts I'd have to hold and he doesn't talk. So for me, I go on group ride to socialize. Like that's why I will join one, to like give me entertainment and connect with people. I'm intentionally making that choice. And Dave would be like, try and keep your handlebars by me. It's like crit racing. And I'd be like, okay, but are you going to talk to me? What are you?
Dave,
what? And he's fine. He's the tempo man, and he just rides tempo.
it's like
and
static. There's just
I
static.
asked him one day, I was like, what do you think about when you're doing all of this? And I'm like bleeding out my eyes riding next to him. I'm like, what are you even thinking about? And he was like, no joke, without even, and I mean, the way he's been answering today, he just goes, you know, the TV, when you get to a channel that doesn't have a station and it's just that kind of static thing. Yeah, I was like,
that's me.
that's pretty.
that
much
doesn't
what I
exist
see.
anymore, Dave. Channel 11
yeah,
is
no.
not.
It doesn't turn off at midnight.
No, right? So where do you go? I'm curious. This is a really important conversation, actually. As much as it's like, I don't know, but where do you go?
It's a little bit different now. You know, I'll have a plan for a 5-hour ride, and I'll be thinking, okay, the girls are going to be home from this, and we were talking about doing this later, and so a lot of 5-hour rides turn into 2.5 or 3-hour rides, or don't happen at all. In the performance days, it was just, I think it was escaping and just giving myself all the space that I needed to prepare. And so if I emptied and I wasn't focused on thinking about what's coming later, what happened earlier, you know, the ride might start out like, oh, I'm bugged about this. But right away, it would just turn into, I'm pedaling this bike.
And if I may step in, even as he's saying that, I still don't understand. Like, I'm a thinker. I use my get outside by myself. Like, I would answer this question completely different from you. It's like, I'm going into, I'm not going to look at my computer because I'm out here trying to enjoy what I love, which is pedaling a bike in the mountains, and not focus on my watts because it makes me so upset because I'm not hitting the numbers I used to hit. And it's like, but I really think that Dave Harward is an anomaly in that he can actually use, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone else can get there, I don't understand it because my brain space, that's how I clear it, is while I'm pedaling. And I think you have this very interesting ability to completely focus on what you're doing. And it shows, like, you don't budge. Your body stays exactly this like perfect form on the bike, and you just pedal. And it's pretty incredible.
It is incredible. This is because they're athletes. I mean, when we sat with Keegan Swenson, when Keegan was describing his mindset and how he races, my jaw was dropped. Like, what? Right? And then Sophia answers the question entirely different. And yet they're both doing
At the top
the
of
thing.
their game. Yeah.
Yeah, they know,
Yeah.
they both know where to go in their mind in order to deal with the stressors of the suffer, right? And so their pain cave is an entirely different experience.
Isn't that interesting?
His is just like game on, and she is game on, but she's thinking more about some of those other things. Like they're both dealing with the coping of it differently. And so, yeah, I think it's fascinating to just hear what people do and how they approach it. I tend to let it all loose. Like all my chips surface on the bike. The coach, the parent, the things that this person said this to me in 1982. Like I'm bringing it all up because I'm gonna use it. Right? It's fuel to be anger. It's an entirely different experience. But today, in the world we're living in, if you're a teenager and your life's been pretty good and you have 7 devices, my boys can't watch TV without scrolling their phone and playing a game. Like, so what do you say to kids who are coming in and they're going, Coach, a 5-hour ride? Like, if I don't have an earbud in, I literally cannot sit with myself, right? Because they're so used to stimulus. So what do you say?
I don't know if you just had a moment of like, what are we going to say to our kids? Because that's already starting. Like,
Yeah.
we already have to have 2 iPads because they can't watch the same
And that's at
thing.
McDonald's.
And like,
That's just to go have like a Happy
Yeah.
Meal.
yeah, I don't know. You're going to give us a long car ride home conversation.
I've worked with, usually when I work with a teenager, it's because they're fairly driven. They're thinking about performance. They're already moving up the ranks within NICA, or in years past, they were, I watched a few kids racing cyclocross as 10-year-olds who were just relentless, no matter the weather, no matter how big the barriers were, and they kept pushing. Well, both of the brothers who I coached ended up as pro road cyclists and fairly successful. But they were driven, and they had to, at one point, make a decision whether they were going to become elite Nordic skiers or elite cyclists. And so some of the kids that I end up working with individually, they're already on a path of performance. And
But how do you teach?
how do you
the
get to
focus?
that?
No, how do you teach the
Well, the focus,
question was-
they don't question what the training is necessarily. A lot of times they're asking for more. They want more volume. And I'm like, okay, I know that you're watching Tadej Pogacar's Instagram, and he rides 7 hours a day in December and January. That's not what we're doing. And so most of the time it's bringing them back and having them focus on what they need to do right now.
Yeah.
If their goal was to get on the UAE development team, get noticed for the 17-18 on the road, then we're shifting gears, and they're going to be doing big hours. If they want cross country mountain biking, their longest race is going to be 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And so we focus in on that. And so really it's bringing it back to what they want individually and helping them narrow the focus. And it is hard. There are so many things. And when these young kids get into a position where they're starting to get sponsored, and the importance of getting the message out of the sponsor and what they're doing individually, that's challenging. That becomes if you're not on a really big team with a marketing manager, you're having to create your own content.
Yeah.
And it's expected by your sponsors. And a lot of these sponsorships aren't money. You're getting a little bit of product here and there, but the expectation is really high. And so we've had kids who have performed really strong, and they're getting offers for these development teams, and I'm like, how much do you have to pay to get on this team? And like, would it be better for you to stay local and find some local sponsors to help foot the bill instead of you footing a bill to this team?
Yeah.
And so, a lot of the focus is keeping them grounded and keeping them focused on what they need to do for training, what they need to do for their races. And, if one of their peers gets picked up by a development team, it's like, what is this development team? And should you be having heartburn about this?
Yeah.
And so that's the big focal point that I see. And really it's just keeping them targeted and focused on the day to day, and getting it done. But I also, like, the biggest thing for these high school kids is that their training comes after school. They get their schools done and then it's time for training.
Yeah. Is that healthy for them? Because maybe by the time they're done with their school day, they're so fried mentally that getting on the bike, it's like, that's a release for them, or that allows them to, to focus on something different.
I think
or is it more of a challenge that they're tired?
For most of the kids that I work with, it's a bonus. It's something to look forward to, and get their work done, and then move on and have some fun.
Yeah.
And I think that it makes it kind of reward oriented. They're looking forward to that time on the bike. I know that so many of the kids who have team practices, they're stoked about it.
Yeah.
A lot of those practices are early in the morning too.
Yeah. A lot like swimming. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you see these disciplined people in life, and you talk to them about where they come from, and they were swimmers. And I feel like that's one of the most dedicated junior high and high school groups. They're up at 4 a.m. They're practicing at from 5 to 7.
Yeah.
And then going to school.
Yeah.
I mean, that's impressive.
It is impressive. I don't know how you stare, at the bottom of the pool for 2 hours and then go sit in math class. I mean, talk about mind numbing, right? I mean, yeah, training for Ironman. I can't imagine of doing it in high school, but fascinating. When you think about kids that are doing it well today, what are they wired with? When you think about athletes that just kind of have this thing in them, are there certain attributes or qualities? Bree, have you seen just, when you think about those who are attracted to it and who thrive in it?
I mean, there's definitely, I'm trying to think of the right descriptive word that I think in general natural athletes possess. I was an athlete. Some may agree with this or not, but I always felt like I wasn't naturally gifted, but I worked hard. So I have some sort of hard worker gene in me that I will do whatever I can to be the best at what I'm doing, to a point of I'm throwing the mini golf putter over the fence because I'm so pissed that I'm not the best.
I love this.
So, yes, admitted.
Yeah.
But I think that showed up when I found the sport that was right for me. So I think as parents, letting kids get into things, I mean, when the drive is shown, whether it's athletics or something else, I think there's a responsibility to recognize what kids have and what their interests are and nurture that for them. And I think maybe we believe in it more. Dave feels he was denied his passions and had to chase them his own. Mine were nurtured once I figured them out. But I think the deeper thing, whether just taking from personal experience or what we see, is that kids that innately have a drive to be the best at what they do, or at least accomplish specific goals within sport, it's there and they're going to get after it themselves. So you can give them all the right tools, but they have to have it.
Yeah, there has to be that self-motivation, but having tools, having parents or supportive figures facilitate, like by either helping to provide tools, provide the right tools, help with positive motivation, help with positive experience. I think that's just absolutely pivotal.
Am I wrong to think that we're almost obligated as parents to do that?
I don't think so. But that's the parenting role I want to take on.
Well, it's like
So-
it's like obligated. When you say obligation, it almost sounds like you have to do it, versus you're so overwhelmed with helping this little person that you can't do anything but facilitate.
Yeah.
And yeah, it strikes a chord with me, just from my personal experience. I love it when I take on a teenage athlete and their parents are like, we're willing to facilitate, but they have to do the work. And there's certain protocols that I need to follow when I'm working with a teenager, as far as like their parents should know what's going on. And if there's something that concerns me, it definitely should concern the parent. And so with both the athlete and the parent, I'm like, I'm going to communicate with you both. And, there's not a athlete coach, we're not going to, it's not like a patient situation with a doctor.
Yeah.
If you're a teenager, your parents need to be involved. But the parent is saying this is their responsibility. But I'm going to provide the tools. I'm going to provide the logistics, and that's when it's going to be a win.
Yeah.
And it's going to connect the dots. And that's the really cool thing about NICA, where it's an absolute reliance on families or on outside figures to help produce the races even.
Yeah.
In the early days, we had a really small staff, and it's like, we can do awards when the infield is taken down. That, like, the trailer was packed so fast.
Yeah. All volunteer.
Yeah. And it's just amazing. Like, yes, there is an obligation, but it's more like it's something that you can't help yourself but do as a parent. And it will pay dividends for those children as they become adults.
Are you seeing any situations where when the parent wants it more than the child, that the child all of a sudden shows up and is like, oh, that was just amazing? What's toxicity that you see from, the parent who wants it more than the child?
You see that.
There's definitely
Yeah.
that exists, and I think it's well intentioned, but I also think it's at that point our responsibility to recognize that we talk to the athlete. The athlete needs to be saying how they're feeling, if training's going well, and things. It's okay. We can hear the parents' input because it's needed, but it's very important to make sure that we're talking to the athlete specifically to get the feedback, more so than if the parents are impressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all, sometimes it can be helping the parent navigate too, helping them like understand, like, look, and I've seen it in the decades where you see the up and coming junior and they're just getting pummeled by their parents to, you have to do this. And you see that with any sport or artistic endeavor. Like if the kid gets pushed because the parent wants it so bad, maybe they end up continuing, but there's so many mega talented kids who at 18, they're just like, no way, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a bummer.
Yeah, their form of rebellion because their parents were so involved, right, is to just shut everything down that their parents were pushing.
Sure.
You know, I mean, which is pretty natural.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to have to be pretty selective on our pushes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
With-
we've had
with
to
the
be
girls.
our own kids. You know, it's been interesting for us to be involved as coaches just on the high school scene, and not at the level that you two are, obviously. When you think about what's going on in sport today, talk about the gravel scene, because it's so freaking fun and there's so much there. You have road backgrounds, and obviously you've raced mountain bikes. So why the push in the last several years of gravel, getting dirty?
I think it speaks for itself. If you've ridden on dirt, something clicks and it's growing, because what we found, at least, knowing the road scene, knowing the mountain bike scene, and seeing gravel as kind of this hybrid, even though it's its own sport, the growth comes from the fun factor. No matter the level that you ride, whether you're aspiring for the podium or you're on a mountain bike and just want to come try it out, or anything in between, you just want to do the distance. It's like a lot of gravel rides are starting to become how centuries have been on the road, right? Like you just, that this month I'm doing this one and my training is what it is. The majority that we see at our events are people that are doing the mid or the long distance for the accomplishment's sake.
Yeah.
Honestly, like we end up as coaches talking about performance and the people on podiums, but really, at least as director of the race, I'm focusing on all the people having a good time. And that's really the focus of the Utah Gravel Series. Is we're trying to grow a community that, if you come to an event, you're going to have a good ride on good courses. You're going to know where you're going. There's arrows
You're not gonna
everywhere.
get lost.
You're not just out on some double track hoping you're going the right way. And when you finish, no matter first, last, anything in between, you get the same welcome, swag, meal, and a big raffle at the end for prizes that everyone's eligible for. Like even the prizes, we want it to be that it's not just the 15 people that we already know are going to win that are here get all the cool stuff.
Right.
And so the short answer to your question, gravel is just fun. I mean, I was switching to gravel, having a pro contract on the road. I wanted to ride independently because it was so fun to just show up and ride on a mass start with like 1,000 people at some of these and see what you can do that day.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the appeal is, and where people are just, we're watching the top people on social media and such. But if you go and experience it, you're in that same pack.
Yeah. I think one of the other parts of the appeal of it is when I think of my favorite rides on a road bike, typically there isn't a single car there. Right. It's that sleepy, quiet canyon or wherever. Or, we have a favorite that we go to, not necessarily a canyon, but there's no cars. And you're able to just kind of get in you do your own thing, go suffer. And you get that immediately in gravel, right?
Sure.
You're not going to see a single car all day. So I love that part of it too.
It's a good point.
Tell us about the cool courses.
Yeah.
Because for me, to Preston's point, part of the reason that I continue to ride all year is because we live in an incredible state. It's stunning. And so to go to some of these places and to do what we love, but be out seeing it by bike, just get to see rad stuff all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Our courses specifically, I'm very proud of them. 2 of them were created before, and we added them. But-
3, actually.
Oh yeah, 3
With
to 4.
Allred
So
adding-
the Dirty Dino is our flagship race, and it is in Vernal, Utah. It's called Dirty Dino because it's in Dinosaur Land, or the outskirts, up in the Uinta Mountains above it. And we were contacted because I used to help with the Ultimate Challenge at Tour of Utah. Someone got my number and called me and said, "We hear you direct races. Can you do one? We have a bunch of people that want to put together a race, and we have really great gravel." And I was like, "You've got the wrong number."
We've got great gravel.
Yeah,
I love that.
No, that's seriously
Yeah, that's awesome.
about, in a nutshell, what this call was. And for some reason, I took the meeting. I was even on vacation when I took the call. It's like, "Can we talk next week?" And we decided to go out and check it out. And it was like, what is this gem area that, like, we have all this to tap into? And I also have a partner that's an incredible course designer who thinks of everything. So we're really proud of our courses on in Vernal. We get a lot of great feedback about it. The dirt is,
Yeah, the roads are
not
phenomenal.
to use the term as everyone does, but it is what I would call champagne.
Champagne gravel. And then that's in June,
That one
one's
is in mid-June.
mid-June. Yep.
And typically I'll go out there end of May, and there'll be patches that are not rideable because there's still 2 feet of snow at some of the high elevation points. And then 2 weeks later, it's
It's gone.
amazing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that course, you climb up above 9,000 feet right away and kind of stay up high. But these roads, like, it's perfect dirt road with aspens or super tall pine trees. And you're just like in this corridor of beauty.
And you don't think of it in Vernal because in Vernal you think rolling, dusty, dirty book cliffs-y kind of, right? Tom and I did a road ride, a century there 2 years ago, and I had no idea that by accessing the UNs on that side, how beautiful and spectacular it was.
shocking.
Well, the way that the Uintas are is it just looks like this forever hill. Once you get to the top of that and you start seeing the peaks around you and just the immensity of the forest, I was like, wow.
Well, it's on our calendar. That's
rad.
The
Yeah, it is.
Dirty
So
Dino
that's
is on our-
that's the first one. So
No,
That's the
actually-
third.
That's
that is, yeah.
I'll go chronological.
Yeah, do it.
The first one of the series this year, we're starting with the Salty Lizard, which we picked up in conjunction with the Wild Horse because they were both had the same owner. And Salty Lizard used to be in the fall, but it's out in West Wendover, and it's still nuking hot even in the fall out there. So we've decided to start that one in the spring when it's not a dust cloud, and it's actually most likely the better early season
Yeah, I
weather
went out
to
and
go
rode the
to go and
course a
do.
couple weeks ago, and it's
Already ready to go.
it's so good.
Super cool to go from the high Uintas at one race to the desert on the salt flats, essentially. And
Yeah,
it's
we've
like
got-
riding on the moon.
We've got 2 races in the West Desert, 2 in the Uinta Mountains, and they are all different.
Yeah.
They throw different things at you.
So Salty Lizards first in April 5th, and then we roll over to the Wild Horse, which has actually been around for
At
at least 8 years or so. I've won it 3 times. Once on a mountain bike. I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. It's almost comical that I own it now because it used to be one of my favorites to get ready for. And anyone listening that is thinking about preparing, that's a new word. Go out and free ride it. One year I did, and I did it on a full suspension, and I won because I was just plowing through all the ruts. We tried to choose a date where that won't be the case, but it can be very different year to year, even on the same course. And
So is that one in May?
that one's in May.
Okay. So we got the April, the May, and the June.
Yep.
And then, was it the Wasatch All Road?
The Wasatch All Road, which Dave has created a new course It still has the famous Wasatch Wall.
Shoot.
Yeah. Unless you do the short course, you don't have to.
So
And may I say, it's okay to not do 100 miles just because it's a Saturday and everyone else is doing it.
yeah, the
It's
70
hard.
miler-
Do the mid distance where if the wall's going to take you 2 hours, just do the mid distance. It's fine.
and then you don't have to lay in the grass for an hour and a half afterwards. And you can actually talk to people.
Yeah, totally.
But
Where's that at? Describe that just for
I'll let Dave
listeners.
because he's
So
created a really great course.
traditionally, they have been using Soldier Hollow as a venue, but that requires you to cross the Heber Valley twice on a lot of boring pavement that has a lot of traffic. And for a number of years after I stopped racing in Tour of Utah, I worked in different roles, and some of the later roles before the race went away was course director. And so I got to work with communities and private land. And we had run one of the stages through Wolf Creek Ranch, which is off limits to cyclists, but has like phenomenal paved roads. And so even if we were crossing there, there's no traffic. But the ranch manager said, hey, we have double track pretty much paralleling all of the paved roads. Let's use that. And so they're letting it, we're going to start and finish in Francis and go through Wolf Creek Ranch on the way to the wall. And then as we come back in, instead of descending the pavement by Timber Lakes, you take a Forest Service road back into the Wolf Creek Ranch property and do some really fun double track.
Wow.
So all of the,
So
and
good.
Wasatch
That's
All
rad.
Road was meant to be ridiculous and super hard. And I think we found a way to make it just a little bit harder.
But more dirt.
Yeah,
With more dirt, yeah.
UtahGravelSeries.com is where you can go, right? So is that map of the new all road on up?
Yes, and I've been talking with the Forest Service. There might be some changes that are needed just because of the big fire that was on Wolf Creek Pass. And so we might have to make some modifications of the back side of the course, just depending on what they see once the snow melts, because that was a fairly significant impact with that
But all
fire.
that you just described won't be impacted. All
Yeah.
the,
No.
all the new
No.
stuff.
The new stuff, and there's so much to access back there that we don't lack on possibilities.
Yeah. Well, your timing's right, you know, in terms of the gravel scene and kind of where everyone is focusing, right? With the Lifetime Grand Prix doing so much gravel. And anyway, I'm excited to roll my mog.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
You better.
Yeah, it'll be great.
The Mogs will be awesome. Take a few minutes. I'm curious. You guys have so much experience, you know, that I want to tap into it a little bit as we close. Maybe Bree, you can start, and then Dave, you can finish. But just freestyle for a minute on any topic. When you think about the industry, where it's going, how it's, you know, been such a cool thing as part of your life. Any thought that you have that you would want to share?
The first thing that comes to my mind when you say that is that cycling has become my family, our family, because of both of the ways we've grown up and how our lives have unfolded. The bike and the people around us within biking, whether it's for work, racing, or even our social lives, is our cycling community. And so to have it kind of come full circle to become the owners of races and hopefully provide a place for others to experience some of the things that we've been able to experience, provide it for their children, our children eventually, really means a lot to me. I feel like I've been given the opportunity to give back to this community and family for a job. So I feel super fortunate. Yeah, we have to work hard. It's a lot. I don't ride bikes a lot myself anymore. but I don't think I'd change it. If I could create more time in a day, I would. But yeah, I think that's what resonates with me the most with you saying that, is that this is not just my job and experience. This is my work and my family.
It's beautiful.
Yes, a sense of gratitude to the whole cycling community. and
Absolutely.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, like experiences, that's what ends up being so much fun. And like Bree said, we've had a lot of really cool opportunities to race our bikes, to
Travel.
One aspect of what we have done over the past number of years, we didn't really even touch, but we've taken clients on luxury cycling trips in Italy. And like to put those together and then show these clients a really kind of bespoke experience that is unique and dynamic, and things that we really love: food, wine, riding bikes in Italy, and the contacts that we've made there, and being able to spread that to other people is so much fun. And a big philosophy with the gravel series races is to provide an experience. And yeah, it's a bike race, and I want you to come out and race super hard and push yourself to the limit, compete, whether it's for the podium, whether it's against yourself, to make that amazing accomplishment. But we want it to be an experience. I don't want it to be, a big thing is making sure the course is marked amazing. And there's no question where you're at on the course. There's no question which way you're supposed to go. And when you come back, we want it to be a fun experience that you want to hang out. You're not packing your stuff up to head out because there's stuff to do. There's people to talk to. They're like to
Share your experience.
And, we end like a lot of the time it takes a whole lot more time to break everything down because we're enjoying hearing from the riders, like what they encountered out on the course. And I'm typically on the course somewhere, and so I get to see some of the action that's going on. And I'll have people tell me what a terrible person I am for putting them through that. And also people who just like, they can't go past me without giving a high five.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun to take all of the experience and knowledge that we've had, whether it's been as a racer, as a director, as like the backside of production of big races, and put it into what would we want at a race that we go to, and try and throw everything that we can into that.
Yeah.
And it's rewarding. It is a lot of work. It's challenging. Some of these races are our favorite races to do, and people always ask, "Are you guys going to race?" Like,
Yeah.
No.
I can't help but laugh when it's like, no. I will have 4 walkie-talkies and 17 fires to be putting out today. I will not be riding my bike for the next week. Thank you. But I hope you have fun.
Well, we appreciate you behind the scenes making this happen for all of us.
It's not complaints. It's just funny.
When
to
you
look at
when you think about the number of races through the year combined, just take a second. Tell us the numbers. How many people will race the events, and how many combined with how many people you're coaching and impacting? How many lives are Dave and Bree impacting in 1 year?
Well, I never even think about it like that. 300 salty lizard, 300 wild horse. We're expecting 500 to 600 dirty dino, and 500 to 600 Wasatch All Road. So around 1,000 participants.
There's a lot of people
Whether or not
who
that's 1,000 individuals,
do
hopefully.
all of the races,
Yeah,
but then
do the
there's some
series.
who
But that's coming from 2022 Dirty Dino, about 250
Yeah.
riders.
So it's
to
growing. It's going the right direction.
year 4, having 4 events that are continuing to grow. So
I think you've got to sneak in and include some NICA numbers just because of the impact, and you've got to, I think through that. And I mean, I think what Tom's getting at is the scope is so much broader than what these 1,200 that you're listing is just a drop in the bucket of the impact you've actually had.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
because I think
that's
about Utahns
indirect.
who are impacting the lives of Utahns in a positive way, right? We're talking about racing, and we know people are going to hear this and be like, oh, I don't ride bikes, but we're really talking about positive coping in the lives of Utahns, right? And for every racer that's showing up at that race, they're likely in a family with a brother or a sister or someone who's struggling in life, just modeling positive coping, and I want to frame it that way because, I work with healthcare people all day long in the mental health space, and they're sitting in meetings all day and they're trying to figure out, why are Utahns struggling so much with their mental health? Why are they dying too early or taking their own lives? These are 2 people, I just want to say this, with NICA years and years in the races that you're doing. It's probable that you're keeping thousands of people out of mental health trouble. And you may never frame it that way, Bree, when you're exhausted of being a race director, but you're speaking to 2 people today who are chosen drug. Literally, I would have been an addict. I know it. If I didn't have sport and the way that we choose to cope on the bike, we would struggle with our own personal lives and the stressors. So I just have to say that, like, you guys are impacting people in such a positive way. These are the things that are the proactive mental health tools, for Utahns. So I don't know if you want to comment to that or where you were going.
No, that's you hit it. It's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people who they benefit so much from the bike, and we have, like, it's endless. We take a trip to Moab every year, and the whole time I'm driving down, I'm thinking, this would be stupid, but we could add another race here. Or I want to go explore this. And there's like endless outdoor amazingness here. And, if you can get out there, my ride a couple weeks ago out in Wendover, I had some meetings to go to, and I took the bike. It was going to be freezing cold, but it was sunny. And it was a couple weeks ago when the air quality was garbage. And I was just like, all right, I'm getting out. I don't care how cold I get. There's a few spots where I can shorten the ride if I need to. And so I have cell service pretty much the whole time out there. So I know I won't see anyone, which is a really cool thing in itself. I was out there for 3.5 hours. I saw nobody except for Great Salt Lake, or the lake bed, and these stark mountains. And it gives you some perspective. Like, we might have some troubles, but look at what is out there. And breathe it in, breathe the fresh air, and use your body. And it was a good reset for me. And again, I found myself like not thinking about anything except hearing the bike and hearing my breathing and hearing the dirt. And it's one of those experiences where, I don't know, gives you more energy.
Yeah.
Gives you more energy. I just felt good.
I think that's the paradox that all of us are addicted to. How is it possible you can ride for 3.5 hours and be energized at the end?
Yeah.
It's like bizarre, right?
Snacks.
The nutrition.
But it's like, it sounds horrible, but it's
No,
the
you're right, though.
ultimate God drug. There's magic in it, right? And I'm in the mental health space and employ people who prescribe medications, and I'm saying, go get the God drug. It's outside. It's free. Like, go breathe it in. I love that description of like, I was out there and it was quiet. And how often in the world today are like people, I think, hunger for quiet, but they don't know how to do it.
And we have a lot of opportunities for it. And, like I'll go out and ride the wild horse course, or when I'm setting up these courses, like the Thursday and Friday before the race, I don't see people. And it is energizing, whether I'm riding or I'm setting up the course. Yeah. It's amazing to get outside and feel that energy and let it soak in.
Yeah.
There's space for having it be an activity with others as well. I think there's different types of people that benefit from both the solace of just being with you and your body, but also connecting. And that's the one cool thing about this specific sport is that. But I mean, I don't, like, barrier of entry with this sport is a big thing that I think is important to touch on. Is like, you don't just step outside your door and have the equipment or the means to do this kind of things that we're talking about. So throwing on running shoes and just getting out can be just as important. But I don't know. I keep thinking about the whole time I've been sitting here thinking about the coping. And I think I hadn't recognized in myself as much how much of a coping component of my life exercise is. But as a relatively new mom, I'm really finding that even though I'm exhausted, when I get out and use my body, I feel better than even taking a nap. And that's a weird concept and a weird experience in my body, because I'm so tired and I just want to lay down. But if I just get up and go, I actually feel better. I'm a better friend, partner, mother, because I took that time for myself. I think that applies to not just mothers. I'm just using myself as an example, but that's one thing I'm really appreciative of, is having the space to exercise as coping, and even recognizing that as we're sitting here now is how important it is.
Well, and it's an awesome direction that you guys are taking with mental health of, having stoke to do things. And it doesn't have to be some extreme adventure, like Bree said. Like, even if you went out and drove that course and took a little side hike, you're in some place that, like, it's wild. And the idea of having wild things still and putting yourself in it, that's exhilarating. And it can give you the good feels that might require medication otherwise. And so getting outside, that's a big part of our life. And not only can it make you better for you, but it can, like Bree said, it makes you better for everyone around you.
Very well said.
Amen.
Yep.
We always finish this with, you've had your daily dose. Just because we're on the topic right now, I just want to just share this again with our listeners. Dose is really, the DOSE is talking about the dopamine, the oxytocin, the serotonin, and the endorphins. That's what dose is, And so we use that as a play on of go get high, like go get your dose, but that's really what it is. Like get outside and get the dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins in your life. Like that is the healing stuff. And granted, we love it. We're stoked on it when we race, but why is it when people finish a race that they are exhilarated, that they can't just shut up about the race, right? I mean, when our 14-year-old finishes a race, I'm like, you got to pump the brakes. Like your verbal is going crazy right now, but it's because he is high. Yeah. Literally, his brain is high on dose, those feel-good chemicals. So I have to close with just saying thank you for creating stoke and dose in people's lives. I mean, I know it's exhausting being race directors and coaching and all this stuff, but thank you for naturally getting high Utahns and whoever else comes to race. Like what a gift to their lives to have those drugs in a positive, natural way. It's just cool what you're doing. You probably never get thanked, at least not enough, but thank you for what you do.
I would say thank you back to everyone who trusts us to provide an environment to come and do that.
Awesome. You've had your daily dose.